Welcome back, everybody. It's Life Coach Labs. I'm your host, Chris Angel, and I'm here joined today with, I would call you my new friend, Michaela.
Absolutely.
Michaela Keegan-Yadley.
Yadley. You got it. You got it.
I got it on the second try.
You did.
There we go. Very good. Michaela, thanks for being with us here. I'm excited to talk about what you're doing in the world, and especially as it relates to leadership, because this lab we're in is all about leadership. And I think as coaches, transformational leaders, there's there's that calling that pulls your soul forward. And sometimes it's not convenient. And sometimes it feels like the thing we're called to make a dent in is maybe an impossible task. And I think personally, you've stepped into that with education. I have a huge heart for education. I was getting a master's in education and I quit.
I didn't know that.
I was student teaching sixth graders, which was part of the problem. and it was in a public school. It felt like constant babysitting, and my mentor teacher was super strict and, wasn't empathetic at all. And I was so stressed. I quit. I was like, this is not for me. And I think that's too bad. I think that's common in education. And that was over 20 years ago. So I'd love to hear, first of all, what is the work you're up to in the world? What do you do? What's your profession now? And then let's talk about the difference you're here to make.
Sure. So thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to our conversation. I love what you're doing too. I have a 20-year background in education. So I was pulled to it when I was in high school, but I wasn't really sure. I knew I wanted to work with teenagers. I didn't know what capacity. In college, I finally found the content and the method, which was history, which was my least favorite subject in high school, which is really funny. And when I got into college, I learned history in so many different ways from so many different perspectives, and found I was blown away by it. So, and I loved working with teenagers, with youth. So I decided to be a high school social studies teacher. I graduated with my degree in psych and poli-sci, no education degree, because I was not going to stay for another 3 years and do another degree. So I graduated and I spent a year working as a teaching assistant right out of college at actually a residential school for adolescent boys who had it was a locked facility. So they were there because a court told them they needed to be there for different reasons. So in that, they went to school there as well. So I was a teaching assistant with a very small group of adolescent boys. And within that setting, I realized that I needed to be a special education teacher. There were a lot of students there had IEPs for all different reasons. And it just hit me. So I went to graduate school for social studies and for special education because I love both. And I ended up starting my career in 2005 as a high school teacher, special education at our state's lowest performing high school. It happened to be also where my entire family went to school. My mom, my dad, my aunts, uncles, and my grandfather. Wow. So it held a really special place in my heart. And that was where I was introduced to what really positive leadership around transformation in a really hard place looks like and feels like, as somebody who's part of this huge team of people, right? I was a cog in the wheel. And it was really all ships were pointed in one direction, and it felt amazing. And I loved what I was doing. I was actually teaching reading and English to 11th and 12th graders who had IEPs, and I didn't have any curricular materials or anything. And I loved every second of it. And so it wouldn't be the ideal conditions necessarily that you would want to set your teachers up for success with. But for me, I absolutely had a blast. I love my students, and we did a lot of really amazing things. I became an assistant principal because my principal wanted me to be a mentee under him. And in 2012, we moved to another now, which was then the state's lowest performing high school, and embarked on a turnaround transformation experience journey. And it was amazing. Again, all ships going in one direction. I was learning a lot more about how leadership really does look from the top down. Not look, but like how it's, when they say it starts with the top, or it starts with the leadership. I didn't really understand that as a teacher. I just didn't get what it looked like. And I started to get it as I watched him set a vision and then have, various members of his team executing the different parts of that vision, and to have the teachers in the school and the whole school community just buy in was amazing. So I loved that work. And a short 5 months later, I was placed by the district as a principal at a school in the district. And I didn't want that position. I wasn't somebody who was thinking down the road, oh, I'll be a principal one day and I can't wait. I loved what I was doing. I'm very team oriented. And when I believe in a vision, executing that vision is one of the most beautiful things, being a piece of that and being able to, then lead a group of teachers and students who are all working towards that. So I wouldn't say that I traditionally sought out a leadership position or a role within education, because like the leadership role. So like I wasn't seeking out the principalship, and I struggled within that role big time for lots of reasons. I was a great principal. I won awards for it, but the awards weren't why I was there.
Yeah, right.
So what led me to what I'm doing now, which is coaching principals and coaching teachers, is actually the big pain point for me. One of the pain points being a principal was I got to spend no time with kids and teachers. So people don't I didn't realize that as a teacher, that I thought that's all that principals and assistant principals did. And as a principal, I was really stuck in my office, almost paralyzed every day by meetings and things that didn't seem to really make sense or make a difference in the lives of my teachers or my students. And there were lots of other things that led to like massive burnout, but really just saying to myself, there's got to be a better way. And my heart just wasn't happy. So I left in 2020 and I actually went back to the classroom. I had to think back to when the last time my heart was really full. And it was when I was a special ed teacher. It was assistant principal at the one school, but that was a very unique thing that I was like, I'm not going to try to replicate that one experience. But working with students as a special ed teacher had always filled my heart. As a principal, I sought out every opportunity to work with my students. And so I went back into the classroom and I was so happy. I was so happy, so filled again. And I actually had an injury over the summer, and I tried to go back to work in the fall and I wasn't able to. I tried it and it didn't work. So at the same time, I had been using my own pain point as a principal, right? Knowing that like we're doing all of these things that really aren't moving anything forward. Some of it's bureaucratic, some political, some just it really lack of leadership, lack of understanding how to truly take people, meet them where they are, and move forward in a very empathetic, caring way was missing. And so in doing that, I was constantly bumping up against people that didn't have that same approach. And that was really hard for me. I'm a rebel. I'm really persistent and my core values are what guide me. And I can't do things that are in conflict with that. So, I'd been that pain point, and the one really for teachers, like I had seen the struggle of teachers, even that when I was principal, that they were going through, whether it was because we had to put too much on their plate and I would try to remove it, I'd get in trouble. And I was glad to take that lashing, but
right.
It's, I could understand where teachers were stepping away. And those two things caused me to start something on the side where it was just a coaching business on the side, supporting. I just wanted to support leaders and teachers by understanding what is hard for them and hoping to keep them in their positions because too many were leaving. Then with the pandemic, and then with me actually not being able to be back in the classroom, I said, okay, this is it. We're going in full in. And so that's actually really what's led me to being in this position of leadership now, is this need to have an authentic approach to leadership, to teaching and to leading schools, because there's something missed. There are lots of gaps.
Yeah.
But the gaps aren't the ones that I'm worried about, aren't the same ones that people talk about. People talk about the learning gaps, right, for students. I'm of course concerned about those. But what people miss is that even with, a test score that indicates a student may not have achieved a certain level, there are so many other skills that kids develop that take them like further than they even know they can go, further than anybody expects them to go. I know the kids are going to be, I always say kids are going to be fine. As long as we let them be fine. We have to,
Right.
you know, we can't block them. We have to encourage them and help them develop, and support them and show them how strong they are, and then encourage that strength and use it so that they can continue to grow. But the other huge gap is actually in leadership. And that's where that's where we're losing our teachers and losing our principals, because the core principles of effective leadership that you can read, really just Google it. You'll see something from Harvard Business Review or from Forbes or Thrive Global, Huffington Post. All these leaders in management and leadership and all these core principles, it's not being applied in leadership and education. And it doesn't make sense to me, because we've done case studies coming out of Harvard, but like we've done the same work as other as leaders in education, but then it doesn't get applied in whether it's from building leader to teacher or district leader to building principal. And so that's where things are very broken. And so I decided to bypass all that and to get right to the teachers and right to the leaders myself, rather than trying to do it in a position that already I had only about maybe 20% ability to really be there in doing that work.
I love that. I feel like there's a lot of, you said before we hit record, just there's some things you can do in that position that you couldn't do as a teacher or a principal or administrator, right? That you can have certain conversations that you couldn't have had with a teacher or principal if you were in the system, if I were to say it that way.
Yeah.
And I think there is a bypassing. I would say this as maybe even as a statement to any sort of transformation. I think I feel like the change is going to happen, whatever industry you're in. So let's say it's education, let's say it's life, let's say it's healthcare, let's say it's whatever, politics. I think to really create transformation, you're going to have to bypass the way it is and start a new conversation. I don't think you can go into the existing way it is and change the existing conversation. There's too much stuff, whether there's too much agreement, too much pattern and generational pattern or whatever. But so I really feel like, and this is probably good news, because I think as a coach, to realize you can create something new actually is easier to lead than trying to lead in something that's broken.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, 100%. And if I had met you, let's see, 10 years ago, so let's go to 10 and a half years ago. I never would have believed that if you had said to me, you're going to be a principal in a couple of years, I would have said, no, I'm not. Like, no, that's not in my path. I'm not looking to do that right now. I don't know when, if ever, that will be what I'm looking to do. Never mind to tell me that I will have done that for 8 years, then left it to start my own company to tackle issues within the education system. I could never have even conceived that, because I didn't understand how hard it was to do it. And I think what kept me in a lot longer than my physical or mental health should have allowed me to, was this. I was determined, absolutely determined to be the leader that my team, so other administrators, that the staff, the teachers, and that the kids and their parents and families needed. And I was determined almost to show what was possible, especially for kids who, I mean, my heart is with kids who aren't seen for whatever reason. So whether it's because of a disability or not, or they are at risk, or they have, just for whatever reason, the kids who are unseen, those are my people. And my mission was to help them be seen, for them to know they're seen, and then to kind of like turn to like the people that didn't believe in them and say, see what's possible, see what, I didn't even do anything, I just cleared the path and they went. And so that was definitely part of the mission within the system.
I just wanted to point to something, because I feel like so the question that came up for me was, did you have the vision first and then find the people, or did you see the people and the vision came out of how to help the people
within the position of principal?
Maybe even just for what you're doing now. Like
what I'm doing now, I would say I'd say it's both. So I am extremely team oriented. I grew up playing on sports teams, so team sports, team everything. I'm an introvert, so I rejuvenate and, I'm a true introvert where like I really need that alone time, quiet time. And the more the role requires me to be extroverted, because I can be, I need extra time to myself to be able to recharge. So I'm definitely an introvert, but I'm very, very team oriented. So when I was working, when I entered into my role as principal, I said it before we started recording. I feel like I've been building this like team for like 10 years, probably longer actually. Like I could go back to my like childhood or my teenage years and college years and be like, yep, they'd be on the team. But just I love seeking out and finding incredible people and then letting them work on that and fly. And so I think all along, I had always been identifying people for like some fictitious thing in the future that may or may not happen. I always thought about as if I were to start my own school, this would be the team. Like this is the team of people, for right down social workers, school psychologists, guidance counselor, head of counseling, like all the teachers, everything. I have the whole ecosystem developed. And so with this, I definitely had people, but it was really more mission, like issue driven, like this. I honestly didn't want another principal to ever feel the way I had to feel.
Yeah.
And I know that there are so many out there, because principals don't really talk to each other. People may think we do. We don't. We first of all, we don't have time to talk to each other. Right? No, I mean, there isn't any. And then once you're in it, it's one of the loneliest, most isolating positions that exists. It is one of the most, that's certainly the most I've ever felt, but just looking around, it really is very isolating. So when you start to experience challenges, the last thing you want to do is be vulnerable with another, or either be vulnerable with a principal that you don't know well, or put your problems, God forbid, make them think about one more thing. That's how it feels inside. Yeah. So the ones who are probably struggling the most, like internally, are the ones who are the quietest. Yeah. And so I knew that I had the skill to do it, and the conditions were not right for me to be anywhere near healthy in that role. And I never wanted somebody else to feel that way. And then it turned to, so that's actually where this all started for me. As I started to embark on that, what I realized was principals right now are so overwhelmed that what I was finding is they're like, I can't even handle having a conversation, but here's my problem. My biggest issue right now is that I'm not giving enough time to my teachers and what they need. Can you just do it? And so it turned into me supporting teachers, which I've always loved to do, because I've learned that teachers need teachers too. And especially if the leadership somewhere above them, they may not be able to identify it, they may not know, isn't giving them what they need or meeting or listening, then their experience just it plummets, their morale, everything, to the point where now people are just they want to leave. And it's not helpful to a kid to have a teacher in the classroom who doesn't want to be there or is not feeling safe, right? And safety is a lot of different things. It's not necessarily, oh, this kid's going to hit me, which, by the way, like that does happen sometimes. Not really high school, not big kids, but like little kids, there's a lot of hitting. There's a lot of other types of things that for me may not be hurtful, but to somebody else maybe. And there's not the time given to these situations for teachers to be able to feel heard and feel cared about. And that's where that's the secondary, that's where I came in there, was realizing just how great of a scope this challenge was everywhere. Yeah,
I mean, I can hear both the vision first or the people first. I can hear both in there.
Yeah.
Like part of having the vision came from your lived experience of, and the team building. You're like, I can see this person and this person would go here, and the ecosystem of it all coming from your experience in the trenches of it to see what team to build,
Right.
But I also really love the connection to your people, because I feel like for me, it was for a lot of years, I spent time learning marketing, trying to understand the game of things, how does it all work? And I did that absent from my people, whoever my people, I probably couldn't have answered like, who are my people? I think that's a problem that coaches have when they get into business, is they go, so who are you going to serve? And it's very swirly to try to figure out that answer. Because our heart is big. We want to serve as many people as possible.
Yeah.
We don't know which niche to pick, and avatar exercises aren't super helpful.
Yep.
But there is something about when I found, it was like, not when I found my avatar, but when I saw a person, a human, when I'm like, this person I want to help. And I started to invite those people into community, into working together. There was extra fire that came for my vision, because it wasn't just some vision in Chris's head and I'm going to play the X's and O's of a vision. It was like, I'm going to show up today for you.
Yeah.
And that was, the energy of that was so much different for me. And I guess I'm wanting just to point to that, because I feel like part of the leadership lesson in this conversation so far is like, you can have a vision, but without connection to your people, I think you miss some of the extra fire that helps you show up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a vision is only as strong as the people that are part of it, and the people who believe in it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a thought.
So where do you, like, were there some times where because that's a pretty big vision, like when I think about, and then you haven't stated it in a statement, but like the essence I get is like, let's change education. Like, let's make a difference for teachers and principals in a world where people feel safe and want to be here. And it's a big task. How do you, what were some of the fears getting started in your own coaching business?
I mean, I probably had every fear again. So if you had asked me or told me 2 years ago that I would be ever posting on social media, ever calling myself a CEO, ever showing up as that, I mean, I literally would have been like, you don't know me. This is somebody else you're talking about. I even actively said it, like, I'm never going to, I think I might have said it, sell myself or promote myself, brand myself, like all these words. I was like, nope, never, nope, no, not doing it. And somebody said to me, well, if you want to like help people, and they need to find you first, and then they need to know who you are. And like, I'm sorry to tell you, but like, the truth is you're going to have to. And it's really wild to me to know that conversation was, I mean, it was less than 2 years ago that I had that conversation. And so now I still have, it's still challenging. I mean, I am a very, I don't know if it's a humble or just like, I don't like I'm about the work, like the work. I've always been motivated by the work, not the title of position, anything like that.
Yep.
And that's not a bad thing. It makes it hard sometimes for me I've noticed just in watching some of my videos recently, I'm like, I'm still not showing up as like that powerful, passionate person that can have this conversation with you on a podcast right now. And why? Like, why is that? Because that is who I am. It's why I'm in this work. So accessing that person or figuring out what that block is, that has been a real thing lately. And I crave, or I thrive on connection. So like I thrive. Somebody once said to me, it was funny. They said it was a consultant. When I was a principal, they were helping us with some reading, like tons of reading activities and interventions and materials. And so as part of that, she needed to meet with me. And on my list of priorities of people to meet with, a consultant who wasn't part of my building just fell to the bottom because I had so many other fires to put out and urgent things to do, and only so much of my own energy and time. Wow. We finally ended up connecting outside of school. I was at some meeting, and then she found me. We went to like have a restaurant at a pub. And she said, Michaela, she said, you don't have a lot of time, but when you give your time, it's 150% of it. And I'd never thought of it that way. I just always felt like I was letting people down nonstop because I was always never had enough time for everybody. But she said it was a different experience for her than other principals that she had worked with, because they might say, oh yeah, come on in. But then they were emailing and they were on their phone and, letting people come in, and their attention was split. Whereas for me, like that undivided attention is something that in that connection is I think it's at the center of everything. People are at the center of everything that we do. So I think that part has been challenging, just trying to figure out how to reach out and find and make those connections with people who I don't know, because people who know me know who I am. How do I establish myself or let them know like who I am without being like, hi, I'm Michaela. And my husband makes fun of me all the time. He's like, do you have to start because he'll hear me making like some kind of like a TikTok or Instagram reel or something. And he's like, don't they know you by now? So I'm like, you don't understand how it works, Brian. It didn't go through the FYP yet. But yeah, I don't like that. It's the awkwardness, like that kind of stuff, like just being completely new to that world of getting myself out, putting myself out there, challenging myself to do it. Those have been some hurdles. I think also I am a very big picture thinker, obviously, because I'm like attempting to, my mission really is to, the mission statement is to keep teachers and leaders in their positions because they feel effective, needed, valued, and supported. I realized that kind of like could apply to every teacher and every leader in the country. So who am I trying to help? That actually truly is the mission. And then I realized that right now, who I'm attracting tend to be unlike what people thought it would be. A lot of people thought it would be like first year teachers, second year teachers struggling with classroom management. It's actually teachers who have been teaching for about 15 years on average, who care so deeply for their students and who feel lost. Like they don't, like they feel like they're losing control of everything. Education looks nothing like it did when we got into it, 15, 16, 17 years ago. And they care so much and their heart's hurting because they feel like they can't, they're not doing their best work and they're not feeling their best. And so I'm finding those are the teachers who I'm attracting the most. And so right now I'm kind of thinking to myself and trying to figure out like, okay, there's something there. What about what I give off or what I communicate is attracting teachers who have been in it for a while, who don't want to leave, they want to stay in, but there's like an existential crisis going on right now of what's my purpose, and also how do I keep doing what I've loved to do in a system that looks totally different than it ever did, and we don't know if it's coming back.
Right. Yeah. How did you, when you felt that? I mean, I hear dissonance when it's like, I'm a big picture person. I've got high energy, and I'm a leader, but then I show up in content, let's say, and I don't feel like myself. I don't sound like myself. I don't have the connection with another person with the webcam or the camera, whatever it is I'm staring into. I'm missing the connection. And to me, that sounds like dissonance because I know myself as one person, but how I'm experiencing myself in the content isn't the same thing. And that's discomforting for me.
Yeah.
How do you keep showing up to, like, how do you not just go crawl into a ball in the corner? Like, how do you keep showing up?
You just nailed it. First of all, you hit it right on the head. That was very well said. I think it's because I know that, I've got 15, 20 years of experience in education, but I've got 10 years leading teachers, knowing that while of course, like no leader is for everybody, I used to retain, I retained almost all of my staff everywhere that I was. And that was if you're retaining people, your culture, they're doing something right with your culture.
Yeah.
And so, it's knowing that there are so many teachers out there that need help and who aren't going to find it, even if they're going looking for it. Because I haven't found anything else out there like my program that exists. And so while that's a good thing, right, for me, and in a business, it's also hard because I don't really have anything out there to model anything off of. And but I know they're there. I know that, and I know the power that just a one-on-one, like a 45 to 50-minute coaching session once every other week with one teacher who was getting 1s and 2s in her evaluation last year, got 3s and 4s this year after, I'm going to say maybe 6 coaching sessions over the course of a couple months. And not just as an but from the same evaluator, but also her confidence and her excitement and her happiness, everything has changed for her. To know that's possible in just that short amount of continuous support. I want to see other teachers get that joy back, because that's when we're at our best as educators, is when we're loving it, because nobody got into it for the money. And unlike what people think, they didn't get into it for the summers off either. Teachers almost universally are in this profession because their hearts and their passion brought them into it. And so to lose that is scary. And to help them find that again by feeling success in their roles is what keeps me showing up, even when I'm like, okay, I sound stoic and uninterested and not inspirational or motivating at all. I'm just another random voice. It keeps me trying to figure out, like, how do I do it? How do I bring it? What do I need to change? And that's where I am right now.
To me, I knew you'd say that, because I feel like that's when you're leading change, which I think is what life coaches are doing. I think any sort of transformational coach, you're in the business of creating change. And yet I see a lot of people who their heart led them to the work of change. I want to make a difference for people. Like a teacher says, I want to make a difference for kids. A life coach says, I want to make a difference for humans. And then you get into the business of it. So if you were an educator, you get into being a teacher, and now it quickly becomes less about how do I make a difference for the kids, because you're trying to grade papers and you're trying to do all the things the job requires you to do, or that you have to figure out. Same thing with coaches. You get into business, and now for me, I turned all my attention to, well, I guess I need leads, so I better figure out marketing. And I started to drink from the cup of marketing, and I forgot about the cup of leadership. It was like, so when I flipped that script and it became like, marketing aside, I'm going to show up for you. That's the thing. I feel like too many people are looking for permission or answers or the right way or the easy way or before they take the step. And I think transformational leadership is about stepping into the mess and leading a conversation. There's no agreement for the change you want to bring. You have to create that agreement with a conversation you lead over time.
And it takes courage. It takes courage to step into that mess. And but when you lead, you obviously need I'm not even gonna call it a framework, just tools, just like an approach, right? To leading. So obviously treating people is the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated, the way you would want to be treated, or the way when you were a teacher that you wanted to be treated, or the way when you were seeking out coaching, that when you were at your most vulnerable, the way that you wanted somebody to coach you or treat you, or how you didn't want to be treated, keeping that at the forefront, and then stepping in saying, okay, well, I'm not the sage on the stage. I may be leading this movement or leading this charge or leading this group, but I need to ask, like, I need to check in with everybody, like, hey, what are our core values? What are we about? What are we not about? And make sure that there's buy-in from everybody. That's, I think that's where, that's when you step in, that's when you can be confident, because that if you misstep, you're not going to misstep too far, because as long as you're always checking in with the people that you're leading, and checking in an authentic way, not just like, oh, am I the best still? Pat me on the back. But like, checking in from a place of genuine, like, hey, I don't know everything. And some of you guys are better at some of these things than I am. And so, hey, by the way, anybody want to help out with this one piece of this project? And usually, 5 people raise their hands, because people always want to do more and always want to be part of that change. When they believe in leader, or they believe in the vision, or they believe in the mission, they want to help execute it in any way they can. And there's always more capacity in the people than we really think that there is. Stepping into that mess and that discomfort is actually fun. Because you figure it out together, and then there's something really, really rewarding and empowering when you either cross a milestone or you reach some kind of benchmark or whatever it is, some point to celebrate. And now it's not just you celebrating by yourself, you're literally celebrating your team's win, because you become a team and everybody's celebrating the win together.
Side note on that, I feel like the more there is a culture of, there's a lot of marketers who are selling coaches their programs.
Yeah,
that's fine. I get it. That's cool. But when the focus becomes marketing, not leadership, I think as coaches, it feels weird to us because there's such a I'll use, it's coming up like culture of pedestals. Like, there's charge what you're worth, and you got to look bigger than you are, and there's so much performance anxiety, and because we're looking to grow our business and we're looking for leads, like I get it, we're like, I got to figure out this piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But it conditions you for the wrong frame of mind. Like if you were just simply to look at like, I'm going to get in the trenches and serve people, regardless of how the podcast sounded, or regardless of what your post sounded like, whatever, you are getting in the trenches to serve people, then I feel like that is more congruent for who you know yourself as. So if you're a coach listening to this right now, like when you start to serve people, it will feel more congruent than when you try to do marketing. Do you know what I mean? I think that's where a lot of people are stuck right now. It's like, if you would just go serve people instead of worrying about charging what you're worth, just go serve people. And now you can start to get some momentum.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up, because obviously we all have goals, right? Well, we have goals and we have actually like needs, like we have a mortgage, right? Like we've got like, okay, so I do have this like minimum amount of money monthly that I need to make to sustain the lifestyle that I have right now. Totally. Is there wiggle room? I'm sure there is. But do I want to really, really think about that right now? No, I don't. So we have, we do have like our bare minimum number that we need to see. Then there might be like a goal that we want to see. And then there might be some dream that we're dreaming about. Because if we're an entrepreneur, that is what we are doing that. Yeah. But I can say that some of the times when I felt the most aligned or the most fulfilled, or that I was making the biggest impact, is when I was serving my first and only one-to-one client that I didn't even seek out, who found me because I was trying to sell something else to a whole different group of people. And she happened to find me, and I was like, okay. And what I was attempting to sell to an entirely different group of people was much more high ticket than the one-on-one coaching ended up being with this teacher. But she honestly, like, I would probably dedicate everything that I ever do in the future to her, because she opened my eyes to how I can serve. B, I got to see her wins every single time we met. And that helped me keep going, because I was like, oh, I'm helping. Like, this is making a difference. Like, it's not like I didn't know I've made differences with people before, but in a different role. And so to see her having wins and her be excited about her work just made me more excited about the work I was doing with her and more committed. And so it didn't even become at that point about the money. It became about just serving her. And that's when I've been my most aligned and my most fulfilled, have been in those moments. For sure.
Yeah. I heard that in your story earlier too, when you went back to teach. You're like, I went back and just taught, and I have never, I felt so happy. There are certain places and people that when you are serving them in their presence, fills you up. And I think sometimes in the avatar exercises of marketing, we make it too cerebral, too heady about the thing. And you just go like, look back in your life at where you felt most fulfilled. And if I look back in my life, it wasn't like I was always hanging out with life coaches. Who I was hanging out with that was fulfilling were people who liked deep conversations, people who were interested in transformational work, people who were big thinkers, good thinkers about things. And if I had to put that in a profession, it fits nicely in life coaching, because the industry attracts those people, but it was, so for those of you listening, like sometimes you don't have to look for the industry. Go look for the people that you resonated with, and then see if you can't connect some dots,
Absolutely. And to build on that, for anybody who's listening, just as somebody who honestly, like I launched my membership that last week, like last week was the very first launch of the membership. And I didn't even mean to launch. I meant to launch like in a few weeks, but it just I felt ready for this. Like I felt ready for this launch. I felt ready to get it out there. And then I was like, you know what? I could probably take some lessons I learned and then apply those to when I actually intended to launch, and that felt right to me. So that's what I did. And that's what I'll do. And I do have a lot of lessons, but, we show up as our best selves too, when we're serving people. And if I was so tied to, because like I followed a process, right? Brand new at owning anything. I had never even sold it. Like I don't think I even had a lemonade stand as a kid. Like I did not sell things. So being brand new to it, I was like, I need to rely on techniques or processes, like things that have worked for people in the past. Like I need that because I was in a giant learning curve. I still am. But if I had launched my beta, which was that program I was offering to school leaders, I'll call it, because it could have been assistant principal. And in the summer, I really thought I had it. I'm like, this is what they need. Now I know they need it, but the feedback I ended up getting was essentially like, I'm not ready. I can't even, we're going back into pandemic learning. We weren't ready for this. Now I've got to think about safety protocols again and all this other stuff. I can't even, I know I need that, but right now I can't. Yeah. And I had this teacher who when I tell you, it's not that I don't like teachers, my pain point and what I understood the most was the pain point of a principal, having felt it. So I really wanted to serve that group. If I hadn't listened to the teacher who sent me a message on the side saying, hey, can you help me with this? If I had ignored her and said, that's not my avatar, my ideal client, and had only stuck with trying to sell my program that I fully believed in and knew was a group of people that need support, I would have ignored the teacher who really needed help. And I would not have realized about myself that actually I'm doing a really good job at helping teachers transform this year. And also that they needed me. Right. I didn't know that until if I hadn't listened to her and I hadn't said, yeah, let's do this. And then kind of pivoted away from my beta. And I abandoned it. I said, this is not the time. I know this is not the time. Yeah. And stuck with her and then and then I started figuring out from there. Then I wouldn't have uncovered an entire group of people that I'm working with now.
Really makes me think of a theme for me in the last year or two has been surrender. There is an element of there's an element of you having a vision and you leading and you finding certainty in all the uncertainty. Like there's that piece of it. And then there's the piece of it that is the surrendering, where it's like you don't always know what wisdom is going to present itself, what opportunities are going to cross your path. There is a remaining flexible and soft to the occurring world around you so that you can move in the dance of it, move in the direction that is opening itself for you, for sure.
Yeah.
It's so funny because my background was real estate. So I was trying to teach real estate agents a lot of the things that I teach now. And like you, I think I had some opportunity to speak in front of maybe some holistic practitioners, which was totally different audience than I was used to. But as I was sharing what I normally shared with real estate agents, these holistic practitioners just seemed to get it. They were like energetically, they were on the same page. And somewhere from there, I stepped into life. I found life coaches, and I was like, I would not have made that pivot if somebody hadn't asked me to come speak to their holistic chamber of commerce. And
if you hadn't been open to it.
Yeah.
If you had said, I don't speak, if you could have said that there's not going to be an opportunity in that room for me to make, to further my business or to grow my business and to grow what I'm trying to do. So no, that's not for me. I'm not going to do that. Then you wouldn't have uncovered that.
Yeah.
So that's you being open to people and to the opportunities too.
I think that's such an interesting attribute of leadership, because I think sometimes the connotation of leadership is leaders know and leaders are decisive and leaders forge ahead, and all that is true, I think, in a way. But I think there's some soft skills in leadership about surrender and intuition and all that.
I would say, honestly, that those skills in leadership, and I'll say it, are more important, because I would always say, and I mentored like in a formal capacity about I think 4 aspiring principals while I was principal.
Mm.
And I used to say to them all the time, like, I make well over 100 decisions a day. I probably make 1,000, and I'm going to mess up 100 times. I want to mess up more than that. I'm going to make the wrong call sometimes. Like, I'm going to be decisive, and then I might walk that back the next day for a particular reason. But you have to be able to do that. It doesn't, and it's not, and that there's a difference between that and being like wishy-washy. Or like, no, you also can't be wishy-washy. Like, you're making a decision based on all the information that you have available to you in the moment. And then if new information becomes available, you may change your decision. And then you can narrate to people and say, listen, either, you know what, I was angry when I decided to slap a 5-day suspension on that student. Like, I was mad, and I took it, and I'm gonna walk that decision back, because after having additional conversations, getting more context, and sleeping on it overnight, I realized that was not the it wasn't adequate. That wasn't an appropriate consequence. And this feels much more restorative, and explain it that way. We're human, so we can make mistakes. I used to say I make more mistakes than probably anybody else in the entire school, but always owning those and saying, either straight up, I was wrong and I'm sorry, or hey, my bad. I am going to do better next time, or I slept through my alarm too, and I'm so sorry that I missed that. Just being in integrity and always owning our mistakes is probably the most powerful thing we do. It's not being the all-knowing person who just knows more than everybody else. If we lead from that perspective, then we will lead really in a dangerous way.
Yeah. There's the humility of that, and I'm a person and you're a person understanding, right? Like that I'm not better than you. And of course, like there's so much fear, I think, when people think about leading, because they're afraid to, one, they're afraid to mess up. 2, they're like, who am I? Like, I don't have the results I think I'm supposed to have in order to be valid enough to lead. And I think all of that is backwards. I think, especially in this day and age, like with so much change upon us, the kind of leadership that we're looking for right now isn't the one that has all the answers. It's the one that's willing to get their, roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty in the mess of it all.
Absolutely.
And that takes humility.
It does. And and it also, I guess, maybe this is an aha moment, even just for me right now, in my current practice of being, starting my own coaching business for teachers and for school leaders. Maybe I've been holding myself to a standard that is either not aligned with who I really am as a leader or what I know to be true. Because as you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, it's a kind of like I actually was never, for some reason, and I don't know why, I never lacked confidence in the role of principal. Now, I definitely was harmed in the role of principal, but it wasn't and then sometimes when you're beaten down so much by, it was never my teachers or my students, but it would be so many other things, not the parents. But just the conditions of the system itself, you can start to lose sight of who you are. So you start to have like this crisis. But as far as the confidence piece, I always was very confident in my leadership, because I think I knew what I brought to the table. And what I brought to the table was something that people needed. But the thing is that I didn't bring everything to the table, because who could bring everything to the table? That's why you have a team.
Right.
But I am a very particular type of leader, but I'd stand by that style, day in, day out. Doesn't mean I don't have anything to learn. It just means that like my approach and my style of work of leading a group, I will use no matter what the stakes are. The stakes could be my life, and I'll still lead that way. And I think that that's sometimes what people are afraid to do, is that they think there's only one way or one metric for success. And people that were leading actually may not need that metric. That metric may determine, hey, that was successful. But what they needed was just to be listened to, truly heard, and have a need acted upon, so they can feel a win is really might be what they need in that moment. And you can worry about the massive, metrics later, but people need somebody to help them go to where they are and then say I'll walk with you while we do this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hold the
That's how it was.
flashlight.
Yeah, no, it's so good. That's how it was coming up in my head as you said it. Was like it's less about I'm the leader who has the answers, and more uh I'm the leader who will stand by you as you find your own answers. Like that
Mhm.
there is a place we can go to have the conversation. Sometimes that leadership in itself, like, let me hold the space for you and I to inquire and dig and look for what's in here. That's leadership enough. In fact, I think that's better, because I think if you're just handing out answers everywhere, no, they
Yeah.
don't own it. But when you can be the one who helps them find it for themselves, that doesn't take, all the results in your own life to provide that for someone else. You just have to know the process of holding space for yourself in order for you to hold it for someone else.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, it makes me think of, so you asked like kind of what brought me into this work now that I'm doing in my own space outside of the system.
Mm.
And I talk about this a lot when I do my webinar on the just classroom management strategies that will work now. They're not going to transform an entire year, and they're not going to set the entire school year up for success, but they can, you can use them when you're like, you need a quick turnaround on maybe like the start of class. So when I do that webinar, I talk about kind of like my background and what brings me into, I use the word authentic a lot when I talk about classroom management. And that word I don't think that word exists anywhere in a classroom management like book that you read.
Yeah.
But it's a word that came to me, and it was only in 2019. So it was my last full school year as a principal. And I had one teacher resign, and another one, thank God he reached out to me like the night he was about to send me. He actually had the letter written and sent me a picture of it. And it was a department that I didn't have. There was somebody, it was a middle person in between me and that department. So I did not have like daily direct interaction with them, and did not realize that the classroom management approach that our school district taught into, which is very elementary. I honestly, I wouldn't use it. I would not use it even in elementary school, although I think there are aspects of it that are helpful. I would never employ just this alone. I think, especially working with kids that learn a little differently or might need a different type of approach or setting, I don't think it sets them up for failure. However, I will say, but there are elements of it that are very helpful and we can take. Two of my teachers at the high school level didn't see themselves in that approach. It was very rigid. Like, I mean, it's like scripted. And they were being coached into thinking that if they didn't do exactly what this script called for, then they weren't successful. And I didn't know this was happening. And unfortunately, I found out too late. It was when this teacher resigned. I was shocked, and I immediately went to his classroom. We talked for 2 hours, and it was emotional. He cried. I always joke I had no emotions left in me at that point, but like I was sad. And I said to him, like, our kids need you, because he was amazing. I mean, he built relationships with kids that weren't seen and didn't like math in a way that I hadn't seen other teachers do it. And so I realized that he couldn't show up as his authentic self every day and feel successful or effective. And I mean, what a disservice to the kids and to him that he felt that way. And then the second example is, it was the same challenge for this teacher. He was a first year teacher and felt like teaching must not be for him if he can't raise his voice to this level and stand this way and address this and do this. Yeah. What did he know? He was a first year teacher. He thought this was the way it is. Yeah. And thank God he came to me, because I was like, whoa, hold it. Throw all that away. Yeah. Who are you? Yeah. Who are you when you show up? What's important to you? Let's go from there. Because if you're trying to be somebody else anyway, they're teenagers. They're going to call your bluff in 0.5 seconds. Yeah. Right. So forget that script. We're going to be you. And then let's figure out what you need to do to achieve what you need to achieve with your students. Because if you're not you, then it's not going to be effective anyway. Yeah. So good.
I could probably keep talking to you for hours.
I know, same.
I really enjoy talking to you, and I've enjoyed this conversation a ton. And I always love bringing conversations out, people from outside of the life coaching space. because I think cross-training our brains to think about the things we're dealing with, working on in life coaching, looking at those from different disciplines, different modalities, different verticals is really helpful. So I appreciate your time today, Michaela. Thank you for being here. If people want to learn more about your work, first of all, you have a podcast called Dissect
Oh yeah,
Ed.
I do. Dissect Ed. Yeah, Dissect Ed. Yep.
Dissect Ed. I love it. It's so great. Clever play on words.
Thank
Dissect
you.
Ed. So you do have that podcast, but if people want to
I
reach
do.
out to you, learn more about your work, et cetera, where do they go to find you?
So actually, that's actually a really good point. They can go to Apple, Spotify, Google, and find Dissect Ed podcast. And then my link to my website is always there, and you'll understand why I say that in 1 second. My website, which houses everything, is drkeeganyadley.com. So how that's
Right.
right. So
yes,
how the spelling of that and how it sounds are very different. So if they actually look for the Dissect Ed podcast, then they'll find me going that route if they're listening right now. And if they read your episode notes, then it's just drkeeganyadley.com.
Perfect. Yeah, we can link that up in the show notes. That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Michaela, thanks for your time today. I appreciate all the work you're doing in the world for education. My mom was an educator. I was a failed educator, obviously, sixth graders. But there are so many that are amazing, and I appreciate the work you're doing to help them. So
thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.
Well, that's it, gang. Thanks for listening to this episode of Life Coach Labs. Before I let you go, I want to invite you to two things. One, there is a companion Facebook group to this show called Life Coach Labs. Go to Facebook and search Life Coach Labs. You can see it here on the screen. If I scroll through, this is a companion group to the show because it gives me a chance to get to know you. I want to know you as much as you listen to me and my guests. I want to know you. I want to hear about your important work. I want to support you. So please head over to Facebook and join the free Life Coach Labs Facebook group. Number two, let's jump over to the next window here. If you are looking to create recurring revenue in as little as 4 hours a week, I have documented my community model, right? How do you do community? How do you build a membership model for your coaching that incubates the people you want to serve and do it in as little as 4 hours a week? You can head over to lifecoachlabs.com/model. You can see it right here on the screen, lifecoachlabs.com/model, and learn more about how to create recurring revenue in as little as 4 hours a week. Thanks for hanging out with me in this episode. And until next time, be well.